Mr. President. I have the distinct pleasure and honor today to recognize another instance of some major historical significant event that happened in South Carolina 250 years ago. This is directly related to my home county, and that is Sumter. I see some good folks up there in the balcony from Sumter, and so this is also your story, but it's certainly the story of South Carolina. On August 30th of 1780, the Tories in the vicinity of the McCallum's Ferry on Lynch's Creek were murdering and committing depredations earlier in the war. Matthew Bradley, Thomas Bradley, and John Roberts, respectable citizens who had not joined either side, were murdered in their homes along with other members of the Salem Black River Presbyterian Church congregation. Murders were believed to be committed by the Harrison brothers, who became noted Tories. John Roberts and the brothers Matthew and Tom Bradley were Patriot militia members from the South Carolina backcountry who were killed during the violent partisan fighting that swept the state during the Revolutionary War. Like many other ordinary farmers and frontiersmen, they served in local militia units and defended their communities against loyalist raids and British forces operating in the interior of the state. Their deaths reflect a deeply personal and often brutal nature of the war in South Carolina, where neighbors and even family members sometimes fought on opposing sides. The loss of men like Roberts and the Bradley brothers illustrates that the Revolutionary War and the revolution in South Carolina was not fought only by famous generals such as Thomas Sumter, that we all know and beloved, but also by local citizens who sacrificed, sustained the patriot resistance and helped keep struggles for independence alive across the backcountry. And I would submit to this body and the citizens of South Carolina that that same spirit burns in the heart of every South Carolinian. So I just want to take a moment to express that, Mr. President, and I do appreciate the time that you allowed me to do that. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Senator from Sumter. We have no communications, therefore we are on the introduction of new bills and resolutions. I'd ask the reading clerk to please read.
Introduction of a bill by Senator Alexander. It's to enact the Guaranteed Bank Act by adding a chapter to the code to define terms related to guaranteed banking to prohibit a financial institution from discriminating against a person and to provide for fairness and transparency in banking.
The bill is referred to the Banking and Insurance Committee.
Introduction of a bill by Senator Matthews. It's to provide that each member of the Hampton County Transportation Committee shall receive compensation for each meeting that members attend.
Placed on the local calendar.
Further introduction of a bill by Senator Matthews and others. It's to provide that each member of the Colleton County Transportation Committee shall receive compensation for each meeting that the members attend.
Placed on the local calendar.
Further introduction of a bill by Senator Matthews providing that each member of the Jasper County Transportation Committee shall receive compensation for each meeting they attend.
Further placed on the local calendar.
Introduction of a joint resolution by the Senate Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee to approve regulations of the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation, South Carolina Real Estate Commission relating to the South Carolina Real Estate Commission.
Placed on the calendar.
Further introduction of a joint resolution by the Labor, Commerce, and Industry Commission to approve regulations of the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation, Building Codes Council relating to international fuel gas codes.
Placed on the calendar.
Introduction of a joint resolution by the Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee to approve regulations of the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation, Building Codes Council relating to international mechanical codes.
Placed on the calendar.
Further introduction of a joint resolution by the Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee to approving regulations of the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation, Building Codes Council relating to international fire codes.
Resolution is placed on the calendar.
Joint resolution by the Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee to approve regulations of the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation, Building Codes Council relating to international building codes.
Resolution will be placed on the calendar.
Introduction of a joint resolution by the Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee approving regulations of the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulations, South Carolina Auctioneers Commission, relating to the South Carolina Auctioneers Commission.
Resolutions placed on the calendar.
Introduction of a joint resolution by the Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee to approve regulations of the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation, Building Codes Council, relating to the National Electrical Code.
Resolution will be placed on the calendar.
Further introduction of a joint resolution by the Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee approving regulations of the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation, Building Codes Council, relating to international residential codes.
The bill will be placed on the calendar.
Introduction of a joint resolution by the Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee approving regulations of the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation, Massage Therapy Board, relating to massage therapy boards.
Resolution is placed on the calendar.
Introduction of a Senate resolution by Senator Blackman to recognize May 2026 as ALS Awareness Month in South Carolina.
The resolution will be referred to the Medical Affairs Committee.
Introduction of House Bill 4799. This bill amends a code relating to Certificate of Need exemptions so as to provide that veterans' homes owned or occupied by the Department of Veterans Affairs do not require a Certificate of Need.
The bill will be referred to the Medical Affairs Committee.
Introduction of H 4738. This bill amends a code relating to certain duties of the State Board of Education and the Commission on Higher Education relating to public educator training so as to eliminate the Governor's Teaching Scholarship Loan Program.
The bill is referred to the Education Committee.
Introduction of House Bill 4688. This bill amends a code relating to the operation of golf carts so as to provide that golf cart passengers under 12 years old are exempt from wearing safety belts under certain circumstances.
The bill will be referred to the Transportation Committee.
Introduction of H 4736. This bill adds a section to the code so as to create a mandatory orientation training program for new members of the Commission on Higher Education to provide specific requirements for the program.
The bill is referred to the Education Committee.
Introduction of H 5131, bill amends the code relating to permanent license plates and fees for vehicles of state political subdivisions so as to create a permanent license plate for tribal governments located in the state.
The bill will be referred to the Transportation Committee.
Introduction of H 5284. This bill amends a code relating to the performance of duties of Register of Deeds so as to include Abbeville County among the counties exempt from the requirements that duties be performed by the Clerk of Court.
The bill will be referred to the Judiciary Committee.
The Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee has reported favorable with amendments on S 788, a bill by Senator Blackman. It adds an article to the code so as to provide definitions relating to artificial intelligence and therapy or psychotherapy to provide that a licensed professional shall not be permitted to use artificial intelligence to assist in providing supplementary support in therapy or psychotherapy where the client's therapeutic session is recorded unless the patient is informed.
Placed on the calendar.
House has returned to the Senate with amendments S 146, bill by Senator Nutt and others. It adds a section to the code relating to rights of residents of long-term care facilities so as to provide that residents may designate one person who is permitted to visit the residence in the event that access to the facility is limited or prohibited due to a declared state of emergency arising from a disaster or public health emergency.
The bill will be placed on the calendar.
House has returned to the Senate with amendments S 449, bill by Senator Verdon, amends the code relating to definitions for the South Carolina Pharmacy Practice Act so as to provide a definition for collaborative practice agreements, adds a section to the code so as to authorize pharmacists and physicians to enter into collaborative practice agreements.
The Bill will be placed on the calendar.
House is returned to the Senate with amendments as 694, a bill by Senator Young, amends the code relating to the designation of voting precincts in Aiken County.
Bill will be placed on the calendar. The desk is clear. Are there any requests for local bills? Senator from Greenville, Senator Corbin, what purpose do you rise, sir?
8 on page 4.
Bottom of page 4. 1048, second reading. All those in favor would say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is given a second reading. Senator from Sumter, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Mr. President, a brief introduction.
You're recognized for introduction. Senator Sumter, Senator Zell, joined by the Senator from Kershaw, Senator Graham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll keep this brief. I know we have a very rigid and lengthy schedule today, but I wanted to take a moment and introduce some very special people in South Carolina, in my district, in our districts, up here with one third of the Senate delegation of Sumter. And so tomorrow is starting the month of the military child. It's the color that you'll see around, and I've seen a lot up in the balcony, is purple. It's also Holy Week in our Christian faith. So the purple today is for the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and tomorrow it will be for also the month of the military child. And so I just want to point that out. But first, I just want to say today we have today we have the honor of introducing some Liberty STEAM Charter School Staff of the Year. And scholars that represent the Unified Champions and our Dandelion military scholars. And you'll see they're across the balcony right now, Mr. President. Liberty is a Title I network with 3 campuses, home to nearly 1,000 scholars in rural Sumter. Right now, they're in kindergarten through 5th grade with a growth model of one class opening up per year until the full loadout in 2032. We talked about that recently. 72% of Liberty scholars identify as minorities. 71% are from low socioeconomic backgrounds. 10% are military. They expand from 17 zip codes in 5 counties. So they really are truly serving the intersectionality of our communities. Last year also, Mr. President, it was the first year ever to receive, Liberty received a state report card grading, and it was good. It's the second highest rating that the State Department gives awards. And also they have been awarded recently with the Palmetto Silver Star. But we're not going to end there, Mr. President. So I just want to, I'm going to highlight a few high-achieving teachers from Liberty. Today we have, and if you don't mind, stand to be recognized. We'll save our applause to the end. We have Miss Laura McAllister. She's the current South Carolina School Psychologist of the Year. She's with us. Katie Huggins, we talked about her recently and her accomplishments, earning the National Board Certification, one of the highest honors a teacher can receive. If she's here, please stand. All right, we have Miss Tara Lyles as well. She is Liberty STEAM's Charter School Teacher of the Year. I wonder if I got here too quick for them. Anyway, we also have Miss Elise Rojas, Primary Academy Teaching Fellow of the Year. We have Miss Unisha Sweeney, Primary Academy Support Staff of the Year and Front Office Coordinator. We have Miss Emily Burns, who's actually one of my neighbors. She is the Elementary Academy Lead Teacher of the Year. We have Miss Lakin Powell, Elementary Academy Support Staff of the Year. And then Laura McAllister as, again, the School Psychologist of the Year. So without further ado, Mr. President, I just want to welcome them to the State House and to recognize their individual achievements, but also highlight the fact that next month, April, is the month of the military child. And I'll tell you, as a former U.S. Air Force veteran, 20 years of service, my daughter is a military child as well. We fully understand the hardships that you all go through. Every couple years, you're moving to someplace else. You're uprooting your family, going to someplace else, doing something greater than yourselves, and you make it work. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of the Senate, on behalf of military veterans, and our families. We appreciate so much what you do and what you sacrifice for our country and our community. So thank you so much, Mr. President. I appreciate it.
Please stand to be recognized. We're honored to have y'all with us today. Thank you for your service. Thank you, Senator from Sumter. Further requests for local bills. Further requests for local bills. Senator from Lawrence, what purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
You're recognized for introduction, please. Please give the senator from Lawrence your attention.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. Members, please give me your attention. Now, this is one of the most significant introductions I've ever had the honor and privilege to make. Because other than Linda, I'm not sure I've seen the 3 daughters or any of the grandchildren or special friends of our very own president. So, I'm trying to eyeball where you are. I don't see you. I'm going to ask you to stand there on this back row. All right, Alexanders, please stand.
All the family and friends, please stand to be recognized by the Senate. I'm very honored to have you visiting with us. A very special day to have you here in Columbia to watch with us. Please join me in welcoming them, Linda and family, to the Senate.
Mr. President,
Senator from Lawrence.
you shut me down before I got started.
That's a good idea.
I want to say something to the Alexander family. Now, Light Horse Harry Lee is the one that eulogized, or one of the ones that eulogized George Washington. So that whole speech about first in war, peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen, I am taking out of a eulogy context and bring it live today to assure you that the love and the respect and the honor and the fealty you give your father and husband is born on us. We know it. By the way he exemplifies himself publicly on our behalf, we know that it is manifested in spades back home. So for your support over many decades and years, bless you and thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator from Lawrence. Thank you. Thank you all for being with us today. It's glad to have you all. Thank you. Thank you again, Senator Lawrence. Senator from Newberry, what purpose do you rise?
I have an introduction, please.
You're recognized for the purpose of an introduction. Senator from Newberry is recognized for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I could have all the members of the military caucus to join me up here at the front. I know Senator from Sumter, Senator Zell, has recognized the fact that April is the month of the military child, but we've got a resolution, and I want to recognize those folks who are in the balcony today that are from military families. Today, we're proud to recognize youth from the South Carolina National Guard Child and Youth Program as we honor April as a month of the military child. Military-connected youth face unique challenges and sacrifices while supporting their parents and their guardians who serve our state and our nation. These young leaders represent the strength, resilience, and pride found within military families all across the state of South Carolina. And today we celebrate them and the vital role that they play in our own South Carolina National Guard community. And we want to thank you folks for being here today. Those who are, would you please stand up so that we can recognize you, Mr. President?
Please stand and be recognized. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to all. Thank you. Great to see y'all. Thank y'all. Thank you so much. Final call for local bills. Senator from Charleston, Senator Campson, what purpose do you rise?
Purpose of making an announcement.
You're recognized for the purposes of making an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, today we have the South Carolina Conservation Coalition visiting us at the State House. Many of them are out in the lobby, and tonight there will be a oyster roast hosted by the South Carolina Conservation Coalition beginning at 5:30 at 701 Whaley Street.
Senate is so informed.
Thank you.
Thank you. We go to third reading. Statewide, uncontested, takes us to page 9. Page 9 on the calendar, H 3856. The reading clerk will please read.
This is a bill amending the code so as to delete the term blood type and replace it with the term information. The bill amends a further section relating to issuance of special identification cards and veteran designations on driver's licenses so as to provide documentation that must be submitted on an application for a person's blood type to appear on a special identification card.
Question is, third reading of H 3856. All those in favor would say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is given a third reading. We'll go now to page 10, bottom of the page, S 894. The reading clerk will please read.
This bill amends a code relating to the electronic filing and transmission of death certificates so as to allow a death certificate to be filed on the next business day following the weekend or a holiday.
Question is, third reading of S 894. All those in favor would say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is ordered a third reading. We go to page 11, toward the top of the page, S 935 by the Senator from Charleston, Senator Tedder. The reading clerk will please read.
This bill adds a section to the code so as to require the Department of Public Health to create a pamphlet on rendering seizure first aid to individuals who have suffered a seizure in the workplace and to require state governmental entities to post the pamphlet in a conspicuous location.
Question is, third reading of S 935. All those in favor would say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill's given a third reading. Page 11, bottom of the page, S 958 by the Senator from Lawrence, Senator Verdon. Reading clerk will please read.
This bill adds a section to the code relating to the State Health Facility Licensure Act to provide that patient beds may be used in hallways, corridors, or other means of egress during a justified emergency upon the discretion of the on-site emergency physician.
Ending question is third reading of S 958. All those in favor would say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is given a third reading. We turn to page 12. Toward the top of the page, H 3931. The reading clerk will please read.
This bill amends a code relating to approval or denial of permits so as to establish timelines for the department to take action on a permit application.
Question is, third reading of H 3931. All those in favor would say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is given a third reading. That takes us to second reading statewide. Senator from Greenville, Senator Elliott. What purpose do you rise, sir?
Thank you, Mr. President. Purposes for a brief introduction.
You're recognized for introduction. Senator from Greenville, Senator Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're pleased to have with us today members, folks from the Bob Jones Academy, Student Body Leadership, and their sponsors today. Y'all, the Bob Jones Academy is a K-3 through 12 preparatory school in Greenville. Thank you. Senator from Lawrence, and a graduate here, Senator from Lawrence, Senator Rickenbaugh. The Academy is celebrating its 99th year this year and is looking forward, and Senator from Lawrence, you weren't in the first class, were you?
When you finish,
Yeah. So the Academy is looking forward to celebrating its centennial next year. So with the student body leadership today, or for their sponsors, Mrs. Jenny Richmond, Mr. Lloyd Henderson, Mr. Jason Page, and Miss Lauren Everett. Three of the students here today, Ethan Koch, Macon Smith, and Kira McConicle. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for what you do. The motto of the school is Eternity Matters More, and they are the Lions. So thank you for being here, and thank you for representing Greenville well.
Senator from Lawrence is recognized.
I quip that it took 16 years for me to earn a degree from BJU. And what's the catch there is the entirety of my formal education was within the BJU, BJA context. So when I look up there, I am flooded with memories from 1970 to 1982. And I know that it's a different place and a different space from when I was actually there. Well, I guess you still have the quadrangle. But as note, I was just thinking about the succession and generations of students that were taught by even one single faculty member. So I know that y'all weren't the beneficiaries of Edith Markham, but she has just recently been brought to mind in her elder years. But appreciate you being here. I'm still somewhat connected because I still immediately have 6 nieces and nephews that are in attendance as well. So bless you and your time with us here at the State House. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Welcome. Please stand again and be recognized by the Senate. We're delighted to have y'all with us today. Honored. Good to see y'all. Thank you, Senator from Greenville. We continue. Senator from Richland, Senator Walker. What purpose do you rise, sir?
One introduction, Mr. President.
You're recognized for introduction. Senator from Richland, Senator Walker.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the body. I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but today is South Carolina Higher Education Institution Day. And in recognition of that day, the Institute for Child Success, which is a nonprofit that has worked very closely with state and local government on various issues, but primarily childhood development and public policy and what have you, they have brought 50-plus students here to the State House today. And they are present in the gallery. And these students represent a cross-section of the student body population from 13 different South Carolina colleges and universities, to include Claflin, Clemson, Converse, Columbia College, Coker, Florida Darlington Tech, Furman, Midlands Technical College, Spartanburg Community College, Spartanburg Methodist, USC, USC Upstate, and Wofford. And I would also be remiss if I did not mention the other partners that are involved in this endeavor today, which would be South Carolina Centro Latino, which is at USC Upstate's campus. We have the University of South Carolina Office of Community Engagement, as well as the Early Childhood Common Agenda. This group of students, reflects our state's aspiring young professionals who will be our newest doctors, lawyers, engineers, entrepreneurs, musicians, social workers, and so on. And just about, I would say, all of them are our constituents, and they are eager to meet their senators. So if you would please, Mr. President, join me in giving this group, oh, I'm sorry, Senator from Florence, would you like to?
I would, please.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just very briefly.
Senator from Florence, Senator Rickenbach.
As the chairman of the Joint Committee on Children, I want to personally thank Citlali and Deborah and your organization. You attended every one of our public hearings across the state, one of the most stalwart and steadfast voices to speak on the issues there. And as we traveled the entire state, there wasn't one meeting where you weren't there and advocating on those who feel like they've been left behind, giving a voice to the voiceless. And we appreciate you from the bottom of our heart for what you've done. Thank you.
Please stand and be recognized. Delighted to have all of you visiting with us today. Enjoy your time here in the State Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator from Richland, Senator Walker, and Senator from Florence. We continue on second reading, statewide, uncontested. Go to page 16. First bill up is S-76. Reading clerk will publish. Senator from Edgefield, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Move to carry over.
Motion is to carry over S-76. All in favor would say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. That bill's carried over. We now go to 17, page 17, S-270. We have a committee amendment. Ask the reading clerk to publish the committee amendment.
The Judiciary Committee proposes the following amendments to bill. Section 1, strike section 16.329 and inserts the following. Section 16.329, a person who, with malice expressed or implied, commits an unlawful act of violence nature.
Senator from Orangeburg, what purpose do you rise?
Ori, who he and I have an amendment. I move to carry this over.
Motion is to carry over S-270. All those in favor would say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill's carried over. We now go all the way over to page 23. Page 23, middle of the page, H3974. The Senator from Edgefield, what purpose do you rise?
To carry over.
Motion is to carry over H3974. All those in favor would please say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill's carried over. The Senator from York, Senator Clymer, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Thank you, Mr. President. For purposes of an introduction.
You're recognized for introduction. Senator from York, Senator Clymer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, we're delighted to have with us today the Rock Hill Teacher Forum. If y'all would please stand so we can see you. This is a group of Teachers of the Year from schools across our district, and as the proud product of the Rock Hill school system, I'm delighted to have an opportunity to get to visit with y'all here in a little bit. Thank you for your leadership back home in Rock Hill. Thank you for your service to our community and for your engagement on policy questions here in Columbia. We are delighted to have you with us. And Senators, would you please join me in welcoming this distinguished group to the South Carolina Senate?
Welcome to the Senate. We're delighted to have you visiting with us today.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator from York. We now go to page 25. Page 25, middle of the page, H3557. We have a committee amendment. Ask the reading clerk to publish the committee amendment. Senator from Charleston, Senator Campson, what purpose do you write? Okay, let me publish it and then I'll come to you. Reading clerk will publish the committee amendment.
The Judiciary Committee proposes the following amendment. Amends a bill, Section 1, strike Section 711.
Senator from Charleston, Senator Campson, what purpose do you rise?
Carry over the committee amendment.
Motion is to carry over the committee amendment. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The
Further
committee
amendment, Mr. President.
We have further amendments on the desk. I'd ask the reading clerk to publish the next amendment.
The first amendment is by Senator Johnson. It amends the bill, adds a new section to read.
Mr. President,
Senator from Charleston, Senator Campson, what purpose do you rise?
move to carry over the amendment.
Is all those in favor of carrying over the amendment would say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment's carried over.
Further amendment, Mr.
We have a further amendment. I'd ask the reading clerk to publish the next amendment.
Next amendment is by Senator Campson. Amends the bill, adds a new section to read. Notwithstanding another provision of law, a special election required to fill a vacancy created on March 17, 2026 must be held on June 9th, 2026.
Senator from Charleston, Senator Campson, what purpose do you rise?
Explain the amendment.
You're recognized on the amendment. Senator from Charleston.
Thank you, Mr. President. To refresh your memory, we dealt with this amendment first on March the 3rd, and there was a request to carry it over from the senator from Spartanburg, Senator Bright, in order to review the amendment, which he has done, and we had a conversation just earlier this morning. He's okay with the amendment. And what the amendment does is it incorporates the senator from York, Senator Johnson's amendment, dealing with reopening filing when someone files and at the very end of filing they remove their candidacy, and what happened was, I think, the wife of the sheriff, right, took his place. And so he's got a fix for that, and that's part of this amendment. The amendment also deals with the multitude of special elections that we have in South Carolina. And it would provide for the provisions of S 38, which passed the Senate last February by a vote of 40-0. It establishes certain dates for when special elections can be held. And SCARE, which is the organization of those who operate our elections, actually, they are in agreement with this. For example, why is this needed? This is sorely needed because, for example, in 2023, there were 45 Tuesdays in which there were special elections. In 2024, there were 40 Tuesdays. I don't think any state in the nation works our election commissions, our county elections commissions, as much as we do. And what this bill would do is this amendment would do is it would result in only 5 special election days during the year, except for the U.S. House, the South Carolina Senate, and the South Carolina House. But all your municipal elections, your county elections, they would have to operate their election, have their elections in one of 5 different days. And the election, the SCARE, again, the county election commission organization, they're all in favor of this. And I'll ask anyone have any questions on that part of the bill? I have one other part of the bill I need to describe.
Senator from Spartanburg, Senator Bright, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Will the senator yield for a question?
Senator Yields
Yes.
for question, Senator Yields for question.
This is all elections, including like bond referendums and other elections other than just like a county election or a city
Yeah,
election. This
yes,
would cover bonds
yes.
and things and tax increases and all that.
Right. And that's really important because a lot of municipalities try to slip bond referendums in, like on New Year's Eve, or not quite that bad, but almost that bad. But when the voters aren't paying attention, and so it would apply to that as well. It also provides that filing fees would be paid both for candidates that are associated with a party that have a primary, but also for candidates of parties that don't have primaries, like the Constitution Party, for example. And all those funds would go to operating the election, and that's also a provision in this bill and in this amendment. And I have one last amendment or provision that's in here that would deal with no, that's another amendment. There's another amendment of mine, parliamentary inquiry. Isn't there another amendment authored by me? All right, thank you. So that's what this amendment does. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Pending, Senator from Spartanburg, Senator Martin, what purpose do you rise?
Is this the Bright-Campson amendment that we're on right now?
It's the Campson-Bright amendment.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
The pending question is the adoption of the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted by the Senate. Senator, stand at ease momentarily. Reading clerk will call the
Next amendment
Next amendment.
is amendment number 4 by Senator Campson, amends the bill, adds a new section to read.
Senator from Charleston, Senator Campson, what purpose do you rise, sir?
To explain the amendment.
You're recognized to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment deals with a vacancy on the Charleston County School Board that, pursuant to current law, that election would have to be held just a week or slightly less than a week after the primary elections, which would be virtually impossible for the Charleston County Election Commission to comply with that, to conduct the primaries, and then less than a week later also have an election for a vacancy on the Charleston County School Board. And so what this amendment does, it would provide that the election would occur on primary election day, and I've vetted this with all of the members of the Charleston County delegation. They were in agreement, and it also would result in a lot of participation in this special election for the school board, which is really important. And if we don't do this and we have the school board special election less than a week after the primaries, it would probably be a record for the lowest amount of participation. And so that's one reason why we all are in agreement that it should happen in this manner.
Senator from Charleston, Senator Sutton, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Senator Yield for some questions.
Senator Yield for questions.
Yes,
Senator Yields for questions.
Thank you for taking the lead on this, and I fully support this amendment. What you're doing here is standardizing, making it easier. So a week after what's going to be a high turnout primary election, we're not also having a school board election that hardly anybody's going to show up to. at all. So fully in support of this amendment and your efforts to standardize and make elections follow common sense. Did you know one thing in the future I would like to also work on is our school board in Charleston County is problematic, and that cuts across the political spectrum. There's a lot of fighting, and I think a big part of that is a lot of the people on that board, or several members on that board right now, were elected with less than 30% of the vote because we don't have runoff elections for those elections. So we're getting people where the majority of that district didn't even vote for them at all, and it has resulted in, I'll say, in some more flamethrowers. The focus may be more on picking fights with perceived enemies versus taking care of children. So appreciate this effort and want to keep it going forward to figure out other ways we can improve the method in which we elect school board members to tamp down some of this fighting and chaos that we've been seeing as of late.
Thank you, Senator. I agree with that.
Pending question is adoption of the amendment. All those in favor would say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. We have further amendments.
Amendment number 1 by Senator Johnson has been previously carried over.
Mr. President,
Senator from Charleston.
at Senator Johnson's request, would like to table that amendment. Withdraw.
Senator from Charleston, unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent to withdraw
Is there
Senator
objection to
Johnson's
the unanimous
amendment.
consent request? They hear no objection. So ordered. The amendment is withdrawn. We have no further amendments. You have the committee amendment. Yeah. Go. Senator from Charleston, Senator Campson, what purpose do you rise?
I unanimous consent to withdraw the committee amendment.
Is there objection to the unanimous consent request to withdraw the committee amendment? Hearing no objection, so ordered. Senator from Richland, Senator Walker, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Unanimous consent request, Mr. President.
State your request.
Introduction.
You're recognized. You're recognized. We'll do that before we do the roll call. Senator from Richmond, Senator Walker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the body, March is Brain Injury Awareness Month, and we have with us today representatives from the State Brain Injury Association, clinicians, rehabilitation specialists, emergency responders, advocates, as well as survivors and their family members present in the gallery. They have come together to mark Brain Injury Awareness Month. And so the individuals we have present with us today include Cheryl Jordan, who is a caregiver of a traumatic brain injury survivor. We have Jennifer Ross, who is a support group facilitator here in Columbia. We also have members of the Columbia Brain Injury Support Group. We have Joyce Davis, who is executive director, Simone Howard, who is the health coordinator liaison, Christy Hartwell, who's a program coordinator, Michael Simmons, who's a veteran outreach coordinator, Beth Singletary, who's an administrative assistant, Jordan McKeon, who is working, or rather she's a master social work intern. We also have a volunteer, Bridget Davis, someone from marketing, that's Linda Toro, and we have Alicia Smalls. And their presence, along with recognition from this body, I believe, highlights the broad bipartisan support for survivors as well as families of brain injuries from around the state. And so, Mr. President, at this time, I would ask that the Senate join me in welcoming them to the State Senate.
Please stand to be recognized. We're honored to have you with us today. Welcome to the Senate. Thank you, Senator from Richland. Good to see y'all. Thank you. There are no further amendments on H 3557. On page 25, roll call is ordered. Clerk will ring the bell. Reading clerk will call the roll of the Senate. Second reading of H 3557.
Mr. Adams. Aye. Mr. Alexander. Aye. Mr. Allen. Aye. Mr. Bennett. Aye. Mr. Blackman. Aye. Mr. Bright. No. Mr. Campson. Aye. Mr. Cash. Aye. Mr. Chaplin. Aye. Mr. Clymer. Not voting Mr. Corbin. Not voting Mr. Cromer. Aye. Mr. Davis. Aye. Mrs. Devine. Not voting Mr. Elliott. Aye. Mr. Fernandez. Not voting Mr. Gambrell. Not voting Mr. Garrett. Aye. Mr. Goldfinch. Aye. Mr. Graham. Aye. Mr. Grooms. Aye. Mr. Hembry. Not voting Mr. Hutto. Aye. Mr. Jackson. Not voting Mr. Johnson. Aye. Mr. Kennedy. Not voting Mr. Kimbrell. Votes aye. Mr. Lieber. Aye. Mr. Martin. Aye. Mr. Massey. Aye. Mrs. Matthews. Aye. Mr. Ott. Aye. Mr. Peeler. Aye. Mr. Rankin. Aye. Mr. Rickenbaugh. Aye. Mr. Rice. Aye. Mr. Sabb. Aye. Mr. Stubbs. Not voting Mr. Sutton. Aye. Mr. Tedder. Aye. Mr. Turner. Aye. Mr. Verdon. Aye. Mr. Walker. Aye. Mr. Williams. Not voting Mr. Young. Aye. Mr. Zell. Mr. Zell votes aye.
All senators voted. Senator from Edgefield, what purpose do you rise?
For leave for the senator from Moree, Senator Hembry.
Without objection, Senator from Oree, Senator Hembry will have leave. Senator Williams votes aye. Senator Kennedy votes aye. Senator Jackson votes aye. Senator Devine votes aye. Senator from Georgetown, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Request.
State your request.
Unanimous consent for leave for the senator from Anderson, Senator Gambrell.
Without objection, Senator from Anderson, Senator Gambrell will have leave. Senator Corbin votes aye. Senator from Anderson, Senator Cash, what purpose do you rise, sir?
I unanimous consent
State
for leave for Senator York, Senator Clymer.
Senator Clymer. Senator Clymer will have leave. Further members wishing to record your vote. Final call. Polls will close. The clerk will tabulate. By 40 to 1, H 3557 gets a second reading. We now go to the bottom of page 28, S227 by the senator from Beaufort and others.
Desk, Mr. President.
We have an amendment on the desk. I'd ask the reading clerk to please publish the amendment.
Committee amendment first, Mr. President.
Have the committee amendment.
The Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee proposes the following amendment. Amends the bill, Section 1, strike Section 629, 720, subsection C, Item 8, and insert.
Senator from Beaufort, what purpose do you rise, sir? You're recognized. Speak on the committee amendment. Senator from Beaufort.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, it's not my intention for us to come to a vote on this particular bill today. There's also a committee amendment and another amendment on top of that on the desk. But I did want to take this opportunity to explain to you what the bill is because I think it's important. And I hope it's something that we can pass and send over to the House before we adjourn we adjourn for the year. This is the so-called concurrency legislation. It is an effort to provide local governments with additional land use authority so as to promote growth that is concurrent with available infrastructure, hence the use of the word concurrency. Currently, local governments have two basic tools that they use to regulate or control development within their jurisdictions. They have the right to adopt a comprehensive land use plan, which they then subsequently update over time at regular intervals. And they have the right to implement zoning ordinances pursuant to that comprehensive plan. They also have the right to charge impact fees from developers to help pay for the costs of infrastructure that is necessary. Concurrency provides an additional tool to local governments in that it says that a local government can adopt a concurrency program that says to a developer, even though you have a development agreement with locked-in vested rights to develop, and even though you're willing to pay the impact fees that we have established developers have to pay, this would allow a local government to still say no to that developer until such time as the infrastructure necessary to support that development was available and in use. The terminology used there is level of service. Level of service in regard to roads and bridges, water and sewer, fire protection, police protection, so-called critical infrastructure. We currently have counties in the state of South Carolina that have enacted concurrency programs. I think Lexington County is the most recent incident of doing that because they said they denied an application for a development permit to a developer because the Lexington County Council said there wasn't sufficient school capacity. And so they denied the issuance of a permit on that basis. That's an example of a type of concurrency program. You also have, I think, Berkeley and Dorchester counties to some extent acting in this space. So the first thing it's meant to do is to make it clear that local governments have the authority to enact concurrency programs. I think there's an argument that they may be acting beyond the scope of what they're able to do right now in adopting those concurrency programs. So this would say that local governments have that power. But it also walks a fine line between giving local governments the right to promote smart growth and protecting the rights of private property owners. I mean, there are two important things involved here. Because if you act in such a way as to deny a property owner the right to develop that property, that is a so-called regulatory taking or inverse condemnation, which can give rise to a lawsuit against the local government. And I've looked at states that have developed concurrency programs, Maryland and Florida in particular, and looked at their programs, looked at the challenges that were filed, looked at the outcome of that litigation, and then drafted a bill that I think provides local governments with concurrency authority, but does so in a way that protects the private property rights of landowners. And so that's the underlying bill. There is a committee amendment and a further amendment on the desk that is reflective of my conversations with all the stakeholders in this area, municipal governments, county governments, environmental groups, home builders, realtors, in an attempt to come up with legislation or to come up with a bill that accomplishes the objective but does so in a way that is fair to the home building and realty institutions or industries, fair to property owners, but also giving local governments the ability to control out-of-controlled growth. And so that's the overarching purpose of this legislation. We've all heard about the difficulty there is right now with our roads, in particular in the Lowcountry, the inability of those roads to keep up with the pace of development. You have past councils that have locked in densities that have allowed these homes to be built, and the roads simply aren't there and are not adequate to handle it. So this would allow local governments to condition the issuance of building permits upon the availability of the infrastructure necessary to support it. So I commend the bill to your attention. I commend your attention to both the committee amendment and a further amendment that are on the desk. It is my hope that when we have more time, perhaps tomorrow, perhaps subsequent to that, where we can talk about this and have a conversation about how we can balance between responsible growth and respecting private property rights. Mr. President, with that, I move to carry over.
So, motion by the Senator from Beaufort to carry over the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. S 227 is carried over. We now turn to page 30, top of the page, S 97. We have an amendment on the desk. The reading clerk will publish the amendment.
Amendment number 1A by Senator Verdon amends the bill, Section 2, strike Section 1245-18, subsection A, and inserts.
Senator,
Mr. President?
Senator from Lawrence, what purpose do you ask?
Mr. President, I believe, is it just one inquiry, just one amendment?
State your inquiry.
That is correct, Mr. President.
I'm informed that is correct.
Okay. Mr. President, this is the amendment we briefly discussed on Thursday that brings clarification to the 40-hour training period, make sure that it is once and once only for newly elected or appointed treasurers. Would move for its adoption.
Pending question is adoption of the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Pending question is second reading of S 97, the top of page 30. Second reading of S 97, pursuant to Rule 16, the bill is given a second reading. That takes us further. Senator from Florence, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Mr. President, to introduce the Doctor of the Day.
You're recognized to introduce the Doctor of the Day. Senator from Florence.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor and a privilege. It's a bit of a momentous occasion for a Doctor of the Day. We've got in the balcony my good friend, Dr. Joseph Hoyle, who is celebrating his 10th year, a full decade of being a Doctor of the Day. He works at Hope Health, which is a federally qualified health center there, and we appreciate what they do for the community across Florence and across all of South Carolina. Thank you, Dr. Hoyle.
Doctor, welcome. Thank you for serving as our Doctor of the Day. Welcome to the Senate. We continue on page 30. Senator from Berkeley, Senator Grooms, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Personal interest for introduction.
For introduction. Are you recognized for introduction? Senator from Berkeley, Senator Grooms.
Members of the Senate, we have with us a fine group of businessmen scattered throughout South Carolina, in your individual communities and in my community. And I said a group of gentlemen. We also have some gentle ladies joining them also. Would these fine gentlemen and gentle ladies please stand? This is a group, members, that represent the Carolinas Independent Auto Dealers Association. Today is the legislative day. They're here to say hello to the House member, the Senate member, and what they do throughout South Carolina means an awful lot. They are generally the backbone in many of your communities. They know how to make a deal, and that's what we're here on the floor of the Senate today. We're deal making on behalf of the people of South Carolina, and hopefully you'll go back and make a couple of good deals for the folks in your communities. Members, if you would, how about join with me in welcoming this?
Senator from Florence is recognized.
We'd be remiss if we did not recognize their fearless leader, a former House member, Marty Coates, on the end. Marty Coates, good to see you, all of you up there, and a lot of good Florentines. Thank you.
Senator from Berkeley, Senator Grooms.
Members, if you would, please join with me in welcoming this fine group of business people to the South Carolina Senate.
Welcome to the Senate. We always are delighted to see you. Thank you for your service. Great to see you. Thank you. Thank you, Senator from Berkeley, Senator Grooms. We continue on page 30. Page 30, S98 by the senator from Colleton. We have the committee amendment. The reading clerk. Senator from Lawrence, what purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, to explain the committee amendment.
You're recognized on the committee amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the qualifications bill for auditor, this committee amendment makes clear that we're grandfathering existing elected or appointed auditors that are either elected or appointed before November 1st, 2026. Move adoption.
Pending question. I'm sorry, Senator from Spartanburg, Senator Bright, what purpose do you rise?
Will the senator yield for question?
Senator yield for question.
Yes, sir.
Senator yields for question.
Senator, what are the qualifications that you're putting in this now? I know we had some discussion last week, but I'm trying to remember where we landed on what the qualifications would be.
Senator, citizen of the United States and South Carolina, qualified elector of the applicable county, and either a 4 years bachelor's degree in accounting, finance, economics, or economics from an accredited post-secondary institution, that academic qualification, or at least 4 years of experience in the field of accounting or auditing, or having served as an employee in the auditor's office, current auditor, and then with a subsequent amendment following, it'll be an absolute clarification that there is the grandfathering as well.
And Senator, how are we going to? They're going to fill out an application, and they're going to have who's going to review the application to verify they have the 4 years qualifications and experience.
Senator, I would say that would be the current duty of the qualifying entities now that safeguard ballot access in South Carolina, our voter registration and election commissions.
So now they're going to check references before somebody can be on the ballot. They'll check their references to verify they've got 4 years experience.
If we put it in code, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Pending question is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor would say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. It's adopted. We have a further amendment. I'd ask the reading clerk to please publish the next amendment.
The amendment is by Senator Verdon, amends the bill in Section 2. It strikes Section 1239, 18, item A, and inserts.
Senator from Lawrence, what purpose do you rise?
To explain the amendment.
You're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, again, this is absolutely the 40 hours of training for initial elected auditors or appointed auditors is a one-time training experience before then the continuing education kicks in for those that are already serving in office. Move adoption.
Question is the adoption of the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. We have no further amendments on S98 toward the top of page 30. Therefore, the question is second reading. The question is second reading. Senator from Spartanburg, Senator Martin, what purpose do you rise, sir? Request a roll call to 5 members. Request. Second the request for a roll call. 1, 2, more than 5. Roll call is ordered. Clerk, please ring the bell. Reading clerk, call the roll of the Senate.
Mr. Adams. Aye. Mr. Alexander. Aye. Mr. Allen. Aye. Mr. Bennett. Aye. Mr. Blackman. Aye. Mr. Bright. Votes no. Mr. Campson. Aye. Mr. Cash. Aye. Mr. Chaplin. Aye. Mr. Clymer. Mr. Clymer has leave. Mr. Corbin. Mr. Corbin votes no. Mr. Cromer, aye. Mr. Davis, aye. Mrs. Devine, aye. Mr. Elliott, aye. Mr. Fernandez, not voting. Mr. Gambrell has leave. Mr. Garrett. Mr. Garrett not voting. Mr. Goldfinch. Mr. Goldfinch not voting. Mr. Graham, aye. Mr. Grooms, aye. Mr. Hembry. Mr. Hembry has leave. Mr. Hutto, aye. Mr. Jackson, aye. Mr. Johnson, aye. Mr. Kennedy, not voting. Mr. Kimbrell, aye. Mr. Lieber, aye. Mr. Martin, no. Mr. Massey, not voting. Mrs. Matthews, aye. Mr. Ott, aye. Mr. Peeler, aye. Mr. Rankin, aye. Mr. Rickenbaugh, aye. Mr. Rice, not voting. Mr. Sabb votes aye. Mr. Stubbs, not voting. Mr. Sutton votes aye. Mr. Tedder, not voting. Mr. Turner, aye. Mr. Verdon, aye. Mr. Walker, no. Mr. Williams, aye. Mr. Young, aye. Mr. Zell, aye.
Have all senators voted? Senator Clymer votes aye. Senator from York, Senator Clymer, what purpose do you ask?
For purposes of a unanimous consent request.
State your request.
Ask unanimous consent for leave for the senator from Georgetown, Senator Goldfinch.
Without objection, Senator Goldfinch will have leave.
And further unanimous consent request.
State that further request.
Just come back. I ask unanimous consent for leave for the senator from Chester, Senator Stubbs.
Senator Stubbs, request for leave. Any objection? Hearing no objection. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Stubbs actually votes aye. Senator Garrett votes aye. Senator Massey votes no. Senator Rice votes aye. Senator Kennedy votes no. Further members wishing to record your vote, Senator Tedder votes aye. Senator Young votes no. Further members wishing to cast your vote. Final call. Senator Garrett votes no. Final call. The polls are closed. The clerk will please tabulate. By a vote of 34-8, the bill receives a second reading of the Senate. Please go next to page 31, bottom of the page, S 682 by the senator from Aiken and others. Reading clerk will please read.
This is a bill which adds a section to the code so as to allow an income tax credit for a timber casualty loss in a federally declared disaster area resulting from Hurricane Helene.
Senator from Greenville, Senator Turner, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the bill we discussed last week that establishes a $25 million tax credit that will be available to those tree farmers that suffered damage through Hurricane Helene. It was carried over a little bit because there is discussion down the road of having maybe a bigger natural disaster fund that we need to start putting aside to, and something that we can possibly discuss next year as another bill, but if no discussion, I'd move passage.
Senator from Orangeburg, what purpose do you rise?
To be heard.
You're recognized on S 682.
Members, I'm going to follow up just briefly on what the senator from Greenville just raised with us. I was in a budget subcommittee hearing last week, and we took testimony from the Adjutant General and the Director of Emergency Management about the fact that FEMA right now is a mess in Washington, and they are talking about changing the disaster threshold for states from like 9 million to 40 million. Well, we just don't have, we got a lot of natural disasters, but a lot of them don't reach $40 million, which means that if they do that on the federal level, we're going to be looking at a lot more disaster bills just like this disaster bill, and I don't know that we should do it without a plan to go forward with how we're going to handle these future disasters. Hurricane Helene, we had FEMA provided $300 million in assistance after Helene. Think about if FEMA had not provided $300 million of assistance after Helene, would we be able to absorb that? In addition, we were able to get $152 million in grants following Helene. We had to match those at 25%. And while a hurricane is certainly a disaster that is widespread and affects us all, I could argue to you that so is an ice storm. Or last year, we had the Table Rock fire, which consumed about 2,000 acres in Pickens County in that one fire alone. We had the Woodlands, or Carolina Forest, I think it is, fire down in Myrtle Beach that consumed thousands of acres of land. But we might have an individual person on fixed income who gets their mobile home hit by a tornado. Well, to them, that's a disaster, even though it only maybe hit one person because they weren't in a populated area. What this bill will do, it targets only people that grow timber and says that you guys who had your trees, you know, you see the tree farms when you go down the road, the pine trees. Well, when the winds like that come and it starts leaning some of them over, they lose those trees. You're not ever going to harvest those trees. And a lot of people have to grow these trees for, you know, decades before they harvest them. So they're not really earning income every individual year. They're getting bigger, and in theory, the price of timber will maybe stabilize, hopefully go up, and our timber farmers will reap the rewards of that. What this allows is timber farmers to claim a tax credit, or a group of farmers, all that were affected, to claim a credit to the Department of Revenue. They'll see how many came in. Up to $20 million they can fund. If $40 million comes in, everybody's going to get like 50 cents on the dollar. If $19 million comes in, everybody's going to be fully reimbursed in the form of a tax credit. Now, a lot of these people aren't claiming a tax gain in any individual year because your trees may only be 10 years old and you're not going to harvest them until they're 20. I'm not sure. I'm not a tax person, so I'm not sure the details of how many years you can carry forward a loss, because this is what this would be, is a loss to those timber farmers. But the big point that I wanted to make to you is this. We got a lot of issues that will be coming up before us in the budget. Finance committees could be taking that up. I know we had deadlines a couple weeks ago for us to recommend to the Finance Committee any projects in our areas that we thought ought to be funded. Coming right behind this is a tax conformity bill that if we pass is probably, we don't know yet because there's no report on it, but it's been rumored to going to cost us more than $300 million this year in the state budget. And this bill is going to cost us $20 million. And there's got to be a better way to handle these type things, maybe within the budget rather than an individual bill. I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman of Finance. But as you might guess, many of the tree farmers that were affected live in areas that I represent, because I represent a lot of areas with a lot of trees, okay? So I surely know that there was a loss. I can ride by as I go down the road and look over into these forests and see these pine trees laying over or popped off. And so Helene was clearly a disaster. Are we going to say that the next ice storm is a disaster? Is the next fire a disaster? Is the next tornado a disaster? Everybody who can recover under this bill could have bought insurance. Now almost nobody does, okay? Realistically, most people that grow timber do not buy insurance, but you could. And I would make the same argument to you that anybody who gets their house hit could have their house insured too, but if they don't, then it becomes something that we have to take care of, or does it? And that's a policy decision. I think we should have some committee look at setting up our own disaster contingency fund, because if FEMA, in fact, is going to be funding us less and less, It's going to be incumbent on the state to figure out how to either fund these disasters or sort of draw a line in the sand and say that's not up to us. If you want to be covered in case of a disaster, you need to buy your own insurance. And I realize that's an untenable thing to say to a lot of people because insurance is expensive. But we all take risk as we invest, and these folks decided to invest in timber. I guess they always knew that the trees could burn or the ice storm could come, but maybe hoped and crossed your fingers that it never would. Just like if you buy a beach house, you hope that a hurricane never hits it, but sometimes they do. So I just wanted to take this brief opportunity to say that from what we heard in our budget subcommittee, the ask coming to us from the state emergency management folks is only going to get larger going forward as FEMA assistance diminishes. And we've got to come up with some way. Well, I agree that in case of national disaster and somebody lost their house, we ought to be there for them and making sure that we take care of all of our citizens in a disaster. We've got to come up with a mechanism to do that in a more methodical way than have one group of people introduce a bill for one tax credit at a time. I'm not going to oppose this one, but I just wanted you to be aware that if we don't set up a system, I think the number and types of these bills are going to get more and more every year because in your district, when you have your disaster, and your disaster might be a tornado, it might be a fire, it might be a hurricane, might be an ice storm, you're going to remember back that we gave people in these 4 or 5 counties a tax break, and you're going to want the same thing, and I would too. Is this the best way to handle this? I would submit to you that it's not, but that's what's before us today.
Thank you, Senator from Orangeburg. Pending question is second reading of S 682 at the bottom of page 31. Pending question is second reading. Pursuant to Rule 16, Senator from Aiken, what purpose do you rise?
Unanimous consent to apply the last unanimous roll call.
I'm on pursuant to Rule 16, I'm on a Senator from Spartanburg, Senator Bright. What purpose do you rise?
Object to using the last roll call and ask for a roll call.
Okay, do 5 members second to call? More than 5. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Adams. Not voting, Mr. Alexander. Aye. Mr. Allen. Votes aye. Mr. Bennett. No. Mr. Blackman. Not voting, Mr. Bright. Not voting, Mr. Campson. Not voting, Mr. Cash. Not voting, Mr. Chaplin. Not voting, Mr. Clymer. Not voting, Mr. Corbin. Aye. Mr. Cromer. Not voting, Mr. Davis. Not voting, Mrs. Devine. Not voting, Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott not voting, Mr. Fernandez. Not voting, Mr. Gambrell has leave, Mr. Garrett. Aye. Mr. Goldfinch has leave, Mr. Graham. Mr. Goldfinch votes aye. Mr. Graham votes aye. Mr. Grooms, aye. Mr. Hembry, Mr. Hembry has leave. Mr. Hutto, aye. Mr. Jackson, aye. Mr. Johnson, not voting, Mr. Kennedy, votes aye. Mr. Kimbrell, aye. Mr. Lieber, aye. Mr. Martin, aye. Mr. Massey, aye. Mrs. Matthews, not voting, Mr. Ott, aye. Mr. Peeler, aye. Mr. Rankin, aye. Mr. Rickenbaugh, aye. Mr. Rice, aye. Mr. Sabb votes no. Mr. Stubbs, aye. Mr. Sutton, no. Mr. Tedder, Not voting, Mr. Turner. Aye. Mr. Verdon. Not voting, Mr. Walker. Votes aye. Mr. Williams. Not voting, Mr. Young. Aye. Mr. Zell. Aye.
Have all senators voted? Senator Elliott votes aye. Senator Devine votes no. Senator Davis votes aye. Senator Clymer votes aye. Senator Campson votes aye. Senator Cromer votes aye. Senator Johnson votes aye. Senator Adams votes aye. Senator Williams votes aye. Senator Tedder votes no. Senator Bright votes aye. Senator Blackman votes aye. Senator Matthews votes no. Aye, excuse me. Senator Verdon votes aye. Further members wishing to record your vote, Senator Cash votes aye. Further members wishing to cast your vote, Senator Chaplin votes aye. Final call. The polls are closed. The clerk will please tabulate. By a vote of 38 to 5, the bill receives a second reading. We now turn the page to 32. Toward the top of the page, S 866 by the senator from Greenville, both Senator Elliott and Senator from Greenville, Senator Turner. We have an amendment on the senator from Greenville, Senator Turner. What purpose do you?
Move to carry over.
The bill. Motion is to carry over S 866. All in favor would say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill's carried over. That takes us now to the bottom of page 32. Reading clerk will please publish.
H 3368 is a bill amending the code relating to modifications to gross income for individual income tax purposes so as to exclude overtime pay and certain bonus pay from gross income.
Senator from Cherokee, what purpose do you ask?
I'd like to be heard on the bill.
You are recognized to be heard on the bill. Senator from Cherokee.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. H 3368 deals with.
Hold on just a second. I'd ask for some order, please.
The bill deals with IRS conformity. To conform or not to conform, that's the question. If this bill conforms the state tax code to changes made to the federal tax code through December 31st, 2025, this bill will allow South Carolina tax filers to take advantage of the provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act when filing their 2025 tax returns. These include increased standard deductions, enhanced senior deductions, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. But if we don't conform, if we vote against this bill, then South Carolinians cannot take advantage of these deductions. And it keeps $288 million with state government instead of being returned to the citizens. I'll tell you that again. That's the crux of this bill. If you vote to conform, South Carolinians can take advantage of these deductions when they file their returns, and it keeps $288 million in their pockets, not in government's pockets. I urge you to vote in favor of H 3368.
Senator from Orangeburg, what purpose do you ask?
Senator Yield, or maybe, and you tell me if there's somebody else who I should ask the question to, but.
Senator Yield for questions? Sure. Senator Yield for questions.
You said standard deductions. Can you
tell me what all those are. I understand one of them is like if you pay, if you've got a second or a third home and you pay property taxes and those taxes exceed $10,000 right now, $10,000 is the most you could take. But if you actually had a beach house and a $20,000 tax bill on your beach house, now you could deduct the whole 20 if we adopt this, right?
I think so.
And so while we talk about the taxes on tips, the real driver in this is the other standardizations that are by and large going to affect mostly high-income tax filers. That's where most of the money is going to go back to.
I'll take your word for it.
But you're right. Are we going to do it or are we not? It's the question. But let me ask you this. If we do it this year.
That's just 2025.
We're doing it just this year. So we'll face this same challenge next year as we want to spend another $300 million.
That's like being able to predict who the next governor is going to be next year.
I understand, but you probably have a pretty good prediction, but I want to ask you right now. Okay, thank you, Senator.
Senator from Edgefield, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Mr. President, I wish to be heard.
You're recognized on the bill. Senator from Edgefield.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, for as long as I've served in the Senate, and I'm sure before I was elected, conversations about income taxes, whether that be rates or how we rank nationally or how we compare to our regional neighbors, the conversation has always included, well, you know, one of our biggest problems is we use federal taxable income rather than adjusted gross income. That's always been part of the conversation. What we really need to do, what we really need to do is change that. But there's going to be a hit if you do it to some taxpayers. Yes, moving from federal taxable income to AGI allows us to compare apples to apples with Georgia and North Carolina and others because, and this is important for everybody to know, we are in the minority of states who do this, right? And our competitors in the Southeast do not do this. They've already changed to AGI. Yes, making this change will allow us to set our own tax policy and not be dependent upon congressional action or inaction. This is South Carolina. We are tied to the federal government. Making the change will allow us to have a much better policy over the long term, but it's going to hit some taxpayers, and it's probably going to hit them immediately. And because of that, because it's hard, because it's difficult to explain, we didn't do it. Because that's what we do, y'all. When it's hard to explain, we don't do it. Which is why anytime there's been any conversation about tax policy, whether it be income tax policy or anything else for that matter, frankly, we've avoided the conversation. And we know that things have gotten worse over the years, but we've avoided the conversation because it's been hard and it's been difficult to explain. But something's happened over the last couple years, and the mindset seemed to change a little bit. The House, and Mr. President, I've got to give some real credit to the House on this. Admirably, they took the first step. And when they came out with it, if you recall, last year, they took a lot of heat for it. Now, they changed it some from what their initial proposal was, but the bill still moved to AGI, but it reduced taxes at a quicker pace. And admirably, again, they stuck with the plan. They stuck with the plan because they determined it was better policy for the state overall. And when that proposal came to the Senate, there were a lot of questions about it. It had a lot of conversation in committee before we moved on it. That conversation wasn't so much about moving from federal taxable income to adjusted gross income, right? Everybody agreed that that was a good policy to have. And as the senator from Greenville said when he was standing in this very position, welcome to the game. Finally. You know, I've always thought that it is a much better policy to have more people paying less as opposed to fewer people paying more. Because the policy that South Carolina has created over the years, over decades really, has been one where fewer and fewer people are paying income taxes and thereby putting that burden on a diminishing group of people. We just did it again, by the way, just a minute ago, which is why the senator from Dorchester voted no on that bill. But we do those things because, let's face it, we've never met a tax cut that we didn't like. And different groups are always proposing their own carve-outs. Now, I'm all for tax cuts too. I said during the income tax debate, I think our income tax rates are too high, even though they've shrunk. We've collapsed some of the marginal rates in the middle. We've been reducing it. I like the target that we're headed toward. I like the changes that we made trying to get to a 1.99 over the next few years. I like the changes Senator from Spartanburg made that gets us down to a 5.21 quicker. Right? We're on our way to a 1.99. The idea there is that you're able to reduce the rates overall for everybody because you're having more people paying less as opposed to fewer people paying more. But what we've done over decades in South Carolina is we have a carve out here, a carve out there, and ultimately you look at a really ugly baby. The tax policy has so many Band-Aids on it, it's got so many gaping holes in it that we created this really bad policy where we have a very small group of people that are shouldering almost the entire income tax burden. And we finally made the decision to change that. We finally made the decision, and I was really impressed with this because this is hard stuff. It's complicated, it's difficult to explain, but y'all, we finally made the decision that we're gonna have a better, equitable income tax policy across the board that will serve South Carolina well for a long time to come, as long as we have the discipline not to undo it. Because every time we're presented with an opportunity to undo it, we take the opportunity and we screw up the process a little bit more, and we make even fewer people shoulder that burden. But we finally arrived at that point just recently. More people paying less as opposed to fewer people paying more. Welcome to the game. More people are going to be participating. Much better policy statewide. And importantly, and we should not discount this, importantly, that policy decision allows South Carolina to set its own income tax policy. And I don't think most people around the state understand this, that right now, the way our income tax policy is set, when we use federal taxable income as the starting point, we are dependent upon the good decisions that Congress makes and what is much more frequently the case, the bad decisions that Congress makes. We have tied ourselves to congressional action. Why in the world South Carolina would ever tie itself to congressional action and give up that authority has always been surprising to me, but for fixing it is hard. Fixing it requires explaining to people why we're fixing it, and we don't want to do that. And so we've avoided the policy conversations. But we finally did it. And when we did it, we deliberately decided that we were not going to conform to federal tax policy changes. In fact, that was the conversation here on the floor. We're not going to conform to federal tax policy changes until it got hard. Now there's confusion, and we have to act because there's confusion. Well, look, there was no confusion. We said exactly how many of y'all have been getting questions about this, not just in the last couple of weeks, but for the last several months, right? And the response that I've been telling people is, look, we're moving away from this. We're not going to conform. We're not going to conform because it's bad tax policy. And look, when I tell people When I tell people that this lets us get away from being tied to Congress, almost every person I talk to says, I'm all for that. Right? They want us to get away from that. When you explain that to them, people are not as dumb as we think they are. If you tell them what's going on, they can understand it. And when you tell them that they're tied to federal policy and you're tied to what Congress does or does not do and how that's bad for South Carolina, they get that. That's not a hard one to understand. But some people are up for election this year, and that changes everything. Right? When people are up for elections and you start making policy, tax policy, based on an upcoming election, you're going to get bad tax policy as a result, and that is the bill we have before us. Now, the senator from Cherokee just said that we need to do this so that South Carolinians, our citizens, can take advantage of the federal law, the one big beautiful bill. Now, Senator from Cherokee, I love you more than most, but I disagree with that, and I disagree with the conclusion. But I do think there is some confusion about this out there. What we do here or don't do here has no bearing whatsoever on whether South Carolinians can take advantage of the tax cuts that are available in the one big beautiful bill. Because the one big beautiful bill dealt with federal income tax policy. People can take advantage of those things regardless of what we do as to state tax policy. This bill deals with state income tax policy. If you have a benefit from the one big beautiful bill, you can take advantage of that right now today. This has nothing to do with that. The question is whether we change state tax policy to comply with that federal tax policy. Now, the senator from Orangeburg asked the question, well, what about next year? Right, and that's an important question to ask. What about next year? What are we going to do next year? Because I've told people that the obvious effect from conforming here is going to be that you're going to get a big tax hit next year when we do that. Right? Because if we conform this year and we've got the bill that we've just passed, the governor just signed the thing last week. If we then don't conform beginning next year, you're going to have a big tax increase next year. Well, we'll probably figure out a way not to make that happen. And I get that. But then you've also got it for the year after that. And then even if we do that, the federal tax changes in the one big beautiful bill, these deductions only last for 3 years. Right? So even if we pump in state money to allow for these special carve-outs for this year and for next year and for the third year, even if we do that, by federal law, those taxes are going to increase because they're not going to get those deductions in 3 years. What do we do then? Because now that if we conform, then we're setting people up for a tax increase in that time. And then we're the ones who get blamed for it, right? So if the feds, if you have a different House of Representatives, if you have a different president in 3 years, and they don't extend those same deductions, then we're faced with maintaining those in perpetuity or conforming again, letting them expire, in which case these folks are going to have fewer deductions who are getting them now. Right? Doing this now is setting people up for some type of an increase. Right? It just is. Unless we decide to fund it in perpetuity. Now, that's something that I would expect us to come up with, is to figure out a way to use whatever surplus there may be next year and in the following year to come up with a way to either eliminate that increase for those folks, especially the seniors. I mean, that's where most of the money is going to, is seniors. We come up with some way to fund that through surplus. But remember, the whole plan with the income tax reduction to get us to the senator from Spartanburg's plan to get us down to 521 or as the senator from Greenville told us, we're on our trajectory down to 199, and maybe at some point go all the way to 0. But certainly you're on a trajectory to get to 199, which puts us in a very favorable competitive position with other states. The way that was going to be funded, the way you get to 199 is you use the anticipated growth over those years to keep reducing the rates, because there's a trigger. This is responsible. There's a trigger in that bill that the governor just made law last week. There's a trigger that says we're going to use growth, we're going to use a surplus in these years to gradually reduce those rates down to that 199 goal. Well, if you use that surplus to pay for these, to maintain these special carve-outs, you're going to delay the ability for everybody to get a tax cut, to have those reduced rates, right? Because you're using some of the surplus to provide those special carve-outs. It slows down the process. Now, I think that's a problem in itself, because we're delaying what we just passed and just went into law. I think it's a bad thing too, because I just think it's bad policy. I think it's bad policy to have special carve-outs like that for a group here, a group there, when we've just come up with what is really a good policy, that more people should pay less as opposed to fewer people paying more. By doing this, we're going to slow down the income tax cuts for everybody else. Now, it's also important to remember, this is, last week there was a Finance Committee meeting that had to be postponed because we were on the floor. Hopefully we'll get to Finance Committee this afternoon. But the purpose of that meeting, as I understand, is to hear from Mr. Rainwater with BEA, who's going to tell us that the growth is starting to slow down. Right? The growth is slowing down. If you give me just a few minutes, if you don't mind, yeah. The growth is starting to slow down. If the growth really is starting to slow down, it's going to slow down. If you use, $280 million here for this, and you do something next year to prevent the tax increase, which y'all know we're going to do, if we start using growth like that, you're going to slow down the ability to get to 199, which affects everybody else. It affects every other taxpayer when you do that. About a week or so ago, on the 21st, so about 10 days ago, George F. Will, who probably most everybody is familiar with George F. Will. George Will is a national columnist, more of a libertarian type guy. Sometimes I agree with him, sometimes I don't. But he'll comment on tax policy occasionally. And there was an article that he wrote March 21st, and it was important about something that he talked about here. He says, on Wednesday, this would have been the previous Wednesday, which is probably, 2 weeks from tomorrow, 2 weeks ago tomorrow. On Wednesday, the national debt surpassed $39 trillion. This was less than 5 months after it reached $38 trillion. The national deficit went from $38 trillion to $39 trillion in less than 5 months. At our current pace of profligacy, he uses a lot of big words, it probably will accelerate. $3 trillion milestones can be passed during one fiscal year. The CBO projects that in 10 years, the nation will be spending more than $2 trillion a year just on debt service, which is already the fastest growing part of the federal budget. The national debt will exceed $40 trillion by the end of October. The debt has doubled in the 10 years since President Trump on March 31, 2016 vowed to eliminate the debt in 8 years. He didn't try, but if he had, he would have been stymied by this grinding political dynamic. The fastest growing age cohort is people 65 and older. They are high propensity voters because the more government subsidizes people, the higher the stakes for politics for them. And because of their powerful incentive to vote, the political class has a permanent incentive to intensify the elderly's incentive by enriching those benefits. Last year, the president's One Big Beautiful Bill Act increased the standard tax deduction for seniors, and only for them. This is what we're talking about right now. Longevity is a social triumph, Will wrote, but in the context of increasingly competent and expensive medicine and an entitlement state, it can be ruinous and is regressive. It involves huge annual transfers of wealth upward from current workers to retirees who, after a lifetime of accumulation, are more affluent than their younger benefactors. Last week at the Finance Committee meeting, the senator from Dorchester said, "Why in the world are we taking financial advice from people who've not been able to balance a budget in a generation?" Not only are they not balancing a budget, they're not even trying. The federal government has the ability to borrow money, and they do it all the time. In fact, that's what Mr. Will was writing about here. The way they were able to do some of this stuff, the way they were able to fulfill some campaign promises, is they're just borrowing money. Money that, I mean, we're not even talking about grandchildren paying anymore, y'all. We're talking about money that great-grands and great-great-grandchildren are going to be paying. And what we do here, what this bill is that the House has sent us, is an election year game to fall into that same type of financial advice. It is terrible policy. Now, here's the other thing. We've had good debates this year on tax policy. We spent some time talking about the income taxes. We've talked about boat taxes and other recreational items. We also spent some time on the floor talking about property taxes. And we talked specifically about, if you recall, expanding the homestead exemption for seniors. And this was, Senator from Cherokee, I thought was a great idea to do this because we hear, you know, as I said many times, I hear about property taxes all the time. I hardly ever hear about income taxes, but to the extent that I do hear about income taxes, it is dwarfed by the concerns I hear about property taxes. Y'all understand that the cost of conforming is that they are not going to pass the property tax cuts, right? The cost of conforming for a year or two on income taxes is that we are not going to get the permanent property tax benefits. Right? That's what's happening. That's what's happening because this is costing about $280 million this year. I think the property tax was somewhere in that neighborhood too, somewhere between 250 and 300. I think they're not going to pass the property tax cut because they want this. This is what sells better in an election. Now, I understand that. This is terrible policy, though. It's especially bad because we all know that it's bad policy. And it's especially bad, even more than that, because the only reason we're doing it is it's an election season. And it's even worse that we're caving into this and we're not up for election. Ladies and gentlemen, it was bills like this. It is legislation like this that those men who sweated through the summer of 1787 in Philadelphia decided to create a Senate. There is real benefit in having a legislative body that is closer to the passions and the emotions of the public. There is real benefit in being able to respond quickly to the concerns that the public has. There's real benefit in that. But there's also real benefit in the saucer that cools the cup. This is why we have a Senate. It is to look at these things, it is to take these passions that come from the House and say, hold up a minute, let's think about this. Let's think about whether this really is good policy or not. We should do that here. We should say, this is bad policy. This undoes the good policy that we just adopted and just became law last week. This is bad policy because we have created a system where everybody or almost everybody is going to be a participant in the game of income taxes. But it's going to be at a much lower rate than what we are now and what we would be otherwise. This is a special carve out for select groups to the detriment of every other income taxpayer in South Carolina. And it is a detriment to what we just passed. Y'all, I understand the calls we've been getting from accountants. I understand the calls and emails we've been getting primarily from seniors, maybe some of those who work for tips, but it's primarily been seniors who want that extra $6,000 deduction that comes about. I understand all that. But this is bad policy for the state. It's bad policy for the overwhelming majority of taxpayers. We should be the Senate on this. We should not respond to the emotions and the passions. We should look at what's better for the state as a whole. We should be the saucer. And we should say no. Now, I understand that there are going to be some people upset with that. There will be people upset next year if they have a tax increase. There will be people upset if their taxes don't get lowered on the trajectory that we've set out because we do something like this. We should be the Senate. Because I really do think this is the type of thing, an emotional response in an election year that comes over, we need to do this. Most of those guys in the House would tell you we shouldn't do this. I would just encourage us to understand the consequences of making this change to policy, how it will affect what we just passed, how it will affect the overall tax burden, how it will affect what we've told constituents about property tax reductions. This is all it all plays together. So just understand that that's what we're doing. And also, y'all, part of our job is explaining to people what's going on. That everybody in South Carolina, every senior, every person who is working for tips, every one of those persons has the opportunity right now today to take advantage of 100% of what was intended with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Because that bill, that act, those who advocated for it were advocating only for federal income tax policy. They had no intention, no idea at all that South Carolina would decide that it wanted to be a mere political subdivision of the federal government. I'm afraid I'm going to get hit by the man in the big portrait back there. This is bad policy, and I don't want to repeat myself any more than I have. I think we do need to make a decision. We do need to give some certainty. We need to let the accountants and everybody else know what the policy is going to be. We need to vote on this. We need to vote on it today, but we should vote no. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Calhoun, what purpose?
I'm sorry, and
then I'll come to the senator. What purpose do you rise, sir?
Thank you, Mr. President. To see if the senator would yield for a couple of questions.
I will.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, thank you. And listened intently, and can't necessarily say that I adamantly disagree. But I also just want to make sure that perhaps we agree on some other things. I guess that I would start with you clearly and articulately laid out that this is federal policy, right? That whatever we do, Great Big Beautiful Bill is going to go into effect for everyone's federal income taxes that they pay this year, correct?
Yeah, it's in effect now.
All right, so and then I listened intently to how you're saying if we adopt this, then we'll be adopting bad policy. Listen to you lay out how much federal deficit currently is sitting at for our nation. And so just interested to know your take, is the Big Beautiful Bill bad tax policy for our country?
Well, look, I think that we should I didn't run for Congress. I don't want to be in Congress. Right? I don't want to be up there and say I'm not going to debate federal tax policy from this position. I do think, however, that as a citizen, we need to be concerned. They need to be concerned to the representative from South Carolina, soon to be representative from South Carolina who's sitting over here. They need to be concerned about debt and deficit. Because I think there are consequences to that.
And this does nothing to help with the deficit that the country is currently enthralled in.
The way they wrote it, I think it doesn't help any. Now, I do think that there are federal. I don't want to get too much into federal tax policy, but I do think there's some really bad policy that they made better in this. But I don't think they went all the way with it. So I'll just say that.
I was just given a little interesting piece of information. Can you tell me the last time the federal government had a balanced budget?
It was. I would think it was in the last time the budget was balanced was probably like 2000, wasn't it? 2001.
You are impressive. 2001.
Yep.
Under President Clinton, I believe. All right.
And of course, and look, 2001 was a really bad financial year because some really tragic things happened in 2001, and we started having to borrow. And I think most of us, even somebody like me who doesn't like borrowing money, I would have thought that the latter part of 2001 was a reason to borrow money.
I can accept that. All right. And I listened while you were explaining that South Carolinians, when you go home and you explain to South Carolinians that this is federal tax policy, that there's no reason why we as a state of South Carolina should be conforming to the federal tax code and the federal income levels that we're going to be taxed on, and you say they get it and they understand it. And I agree, they're not stupid. People are not stupid. And that's why I also think that there's a lot of folks that would like to see us pass this legislation because they know. They know, and I'm just wondering if in your conversations it comes up that if we pass this conformity, they will be paying less. A lot of folks in South Carolina will be paying less in state income taxes than they would if we don't pass this, correct?
Absolutely, some people would. Yeah.
Right.
Now, what it does, however, is it delays, if not undoes, and to a large extent, the policy that we set out, where that everybody is going to be paying less over a period. Like we're going to go down with Senator from Spartanburg's amendment. We're going to drop immediately from 6 to 5.21. So everybody's going, and then it's on a trajectory to get to 199. Right. Everybody's going to be going down, but this will delay that process from happening.
Well, and I get that, unless, and it's like you said, I mean, Art, I don't know how it's going to delay us to get to that process because we already passed the acceleration.
No, you're right, we did pass it. It is law, but that law now, it has triggers in it. And you start going down, you're able to reduce based on growth. Well, if you take growth money, if you take $250 million or more, actually this is more than $250 million. If you take $250 million of growth next year away from that trigger and you put it into maintaining these deductions, then you're going to slow down.
But that's still growth, is it not? I mean, that's still calculated
it's growth. But what we passed to get to the trajectory to get to 199 requires the growth, right? You're not going to go down a notch if you don't have the growth to support it. Well, if you use the growth on this, you're not going to have the growth in order to go down that notch. So you are delaying that implementation for everybody.
If what you say is true and that growth is actually slowing down, if we continue the growth at the rate that we're going, then absolutely we're able to do both, just like what is being proposed this year. We can do both this year.
Well, that depends on how many parks and libraries they decide to build.
Or whether or not they actually go forward with the property taxes. And you suggest that they won't be passing the property tax.
That's the clear indication.
Indication, but it's not. But I don't disagree with you. But I guess.
But then I say, even if that were the case, even if we had the growth at the level of what we had the last few years. Now, I'll tell you that like just from thinking about it, that's got to stop or slow down because of the cuts that we've had. And frankly, I think with the Senator from Cherokee's leadership, the way we've been budgeting, it's been in a much more responsible manner, and I think BEA is getting better at estimating very closer to where we're going to be. So the growth is going to slow down. That doesn't mean it's going to stop, but it's going to slow. They're going to start getting better at the projections, I think is where we're headed. Yeah. Now, you've got things that you're going to have to deal with, like law enforcement salaries, teacher salaries. I mean, the things that are going to come up every year that you're going to have to deal with, right? But it's going to slow that down. And when you start using numbers like this isn't a small number. You start taking $300 million out, then you're necessarily going to slow down that trajectory. Because this is recurring now, right? We're not talking about a one-time thing. I mean, now we can use one-time money on it, and fortunately, and I'll give the man up there, Senator Leatherman, credit on that. He did not like using one-time money for recurring expenses. And Senator from Cherokee has continued with that as well. I think in the past, before you and I arrived up here, they would use one-time money and say, well, we'll deal with next year, and that gets you in a mess, right? So Senator from Cherokee's not been doing that. But if you're going to use recurring money for recurring expenses, and this is a recurring expense, you're going to hurt somebody else.
And I think we probably...
And even if, I apologize,
that's fine.
Even if you don't, it's bad policy. It's bad policy because we've set out this approach to treat everybody the same, have everybody at this one flat rate, and gradually take it down for everybody. And with the special carve-out here or there, it's bad policy. When you've already decided that we want to treat everybody the same, and then we say, well, no, we're not going to treat these people the same. They're different. We're going to give them something better. I think that's not good policy.
And I guess that's where I'm at. For the sake of discussion, when did that become bad policy? Because we have been conforming year after year after year. So I'm just wondering why all of a sudden now this becomes such bad policy that we have to stand up against. If it's bad policy this year, then has it not been bad policy for years and decades that we've been conforming to the federal tax code?
South Carolina being tied to anything that Congress does is bad policy, in my opinion. Right? I think that's especially the case on tax policy. That's why I said at the outset of my comments, whenever we would have conversations about income taxes over the years that I've been here, it was always, well, like when you try to compare us to North Carolina or to Georgia, well, yeah, we're higher, but we're really not, right? Because what we really need to do is we need to go from federal taxable income to AGI as the base, because that's what North Carolina and Georgia do, which means, y'all, for those people who are listening, North Carolina and Georgia are not dealing with this conformity thing because they've already made the good policy decision to move to AGI. I think that was a bad policy all along, but it is especially a bad policy. It is especially a bad policy because we made the decision to change.
Right.
We made the decision to change, and last week that decision became law. And now with this, we effectively go backwards on the decision that we just made. That's why I think if you just had a conversation with me about this before, I would have said, look, we shouldn't do that because I don't like the federal tax policy. But it is especially the case now because of what we've just done on the income taxes.
I guess that's where I'm, finally, thank you for all, it's helping me tremendously, but I've had a hard time understanding why we felt the need to accelerate and pass the legislation, again, that we just passed earlier this year. The legislation that you're talking about just got signed into law by the governor, and boxing ourselves in now by agreeing with you that if we conform now, that it's a situation that we maybe didn't foresee ourselves being in at the time that we passed the acceleration. And again, I'm just trying to understand why. Because when we set this
Why did we accelerate?
When we set this into motion 2 years ago, I think by driving down the income cost, we had the schedule by which it was going to happen year after year.
Well, that schedule, I think the one you're referring to is the one that went from 7 to 6 over a period of time. And frankly, because actions that the Senator from Cherokee took, we got down to 6 quicker than the schedule allowed.
Right, but what we just passed earlier this year is going to accelerate the decrease even more so than what we had passed previously.
If I remember correctly, that next year we're going to go from 6 to 5.21.
And I'm just understanding, again, if we're trying to create good policy, it seems like we may be criticized for doing exactly what we're criticizing the House of doing, which is trying to maybe sometimes appear, it's like it's not a campaign year for us. I don't disagree with that. But obviously, is that always the most responsible thing to do, is to get out sometimes over your skis when you have so many other needs that I think, like right now, I think obviously I've introduced a resolution to suspend the gas tax. I think that right now, in light of current situations on the ground, would be a prudent and responsible thing for us to do for the citizens of the state of South Carolina. I don't know if we can do it now because of all of the other things that we've put into play. And so it is a broader discussion. It's really not specific to what you're talking about today. I can't say that I disagree with anything that you're saying from the podium in speaking against what the House has done. But again, it goes back to the overall theory that all of these things work together. And we are piecemealing a lot of things together in a very short period of time, on the fly. And that's why I think it does just scream for the need for overall comprehensive tax reform for our state and a long-term vision of where we want to go with taxing the folks of South Carolina.
Well, to the extent that whenever I sit down in a few minutes, you just made the Senator from Dorchester's comments a whole lot longer when you said. But look, I think it was responsible to do the income taxes the way that we did it, right? That you put a trigger in place and you go down when there's growth. Because my philosophy is government should not take more than necessary to do the essential things. Now, I understand that we'll have a debate about what government ought to do and ought not to do. And I'm probably going to take a position that government ought not be doing that, whatever it is that a lot of people propose. That we ought not be spending taxpayer dollars on that, whatever it is. I mean, that's generally where I fall on a lot of those budgetary decisions. But I think with the growth that's been generated, and that has largely been generated by income tax collections. I mean, when you look at the BEA numbers, you look at where the money's coming from, I mean, income tax numbers have been, well, it was over 50% of the total amount collected. It's gone down some to just under 50 because of the reductions that we've had. But that's what's been fueling a lot of the financial growth. So I think it's responsible to take that down and to do it gradually so that we're not taking more than what we need. And frankly, if you don't have a lot of excess, you're not tempted to spend it on something, right? And because I think lots of times that happens. I mean, it's going to happen. It's happened a couple years ago when what led the Senator of Cherokee last year to say, look, y'all, we're not doing earmarks. Because the year before that, it was like $1 billion in earmarks or something, which is just nuts. Because we had the money. Well, we got the money, let's just spend it. Well, that's a terrible way to make policy, I think. And so to that extent, I actually like reducing things. But look, we had this conversation with the Senator from Greenville when he was up here on the income tax bill. I don't want to be Kansas. I don't want to go through what Kansas went through 10 years ago. I think we do have to be responsible with it. But the Senator from Greenville persuaded me that the approach that they came up with in the subcommittee is a responsible manner of decreasing. But I just think that especially since we made that decision, we should not go back on it now. And I think effectively that's what it does. And that even if the growth is sufficient to pay for it next year or the year after, it's still bad policy. Because I love the idea of treating everybody the same and having more people paying less as opposed to fewer people paying more. And this is an effort to have fewer people paying more than what we just decided on a few weeks ago.
Senator from Kershaw, what purpose do you ask?
Senator, yield for questions.
Senator, yield for questions. Senator, yield for questions.
Senator, you mentioned about hearing from the public about our accountants. Can you recall what those accountants were asking? Actually, what were they actually asking in that question?
So I think what the accountants were really asking for is, we just want to know what you're going to do, right? They wanted certainty. Like, just tell us what we got to do, and we can do it, whatever. Now, they've been used to using federal taxable income as the base. and the word's gotten out, especially among seniors. But I think really what they want is just some certainty, which is why I said we need to vote on this today, right? I mean, we need to tell them one way or another what we're going to do.
Senator, and I think you're right. I think that's exactly what they want. They want to know. I think that's what businesses want to know is what we're going to do. And I think obviously, as you were said a minute ago, we taxed a tax policy last week, signed, it's passed, and to your point and how I read this bill, it actually goes against what we just passed from a policy standpoint.
Yeah, well, it's absolutely the exact opposite policy of what was just signed into law last week. Now, you could argue that what was signed into law last week actually goes into effect next year, right?
No question, Senator.
Right, and so this doesn't get to that, but this sets up for that conversation. It is contrary, it is the opposite of the policy that went into effect last week.
Senator, one of the things that we talk about often in here is about the growth in South Carolina. You and I have had debates about how many people are moving here, and policies we make more people moving here. Would you agree that our tax policies that we've maybe passed last week, maybe not the property tax one, but the other ones are going to people are going to move here?
Well, look, I think one of the things that makes South Carolina attractive to people all over the country, if not the world, is that our tax policy overall has been more beneficial to individuals, to businesses, than what you see in some other places, right? And if you make it even more beneficial, then that's going to attract more people to come.
And Senator, would you agree that we're going to need more money in South Carolina to actually take care of the problems of South Carolina, from roads, from infrastructure? Won't we need those funds to take care of this population growth? And I'm not saying big government, but I'm talking about infrastructure and real things that I believe we all have problems with in all of our districts.
I think this is an area where you and I may diverge a little bit, because I don't think it's government's responsibility to take care of all those problems. I do think roads and bridges is one.
Absolutely.
And I think that's one that people need. I mean, like the senator from Calhoun was talking about the resolution that he's introduced to suspend the gas tax. I think people need to understand that the effect of that is to take $500 million out of the trust fund.
Senator,
and so, look, there are things we need to pay for, but there are things that with what we passed, what became law last week on income taxes, what we've done allows for us to meet those essential obligations. And I think that's important to understand. It allows us to meet those essential obligations, but it reduces our ability to do things that probably are not as essential.
Senator, as far as this policy goes for South Carolina, we've had a lot of industries choosing to move to South Carolina. We've had a lot of businesses that are expanding in South Carolina. Going back to your point earlier, why do you think that happens in South Carolina, maybe compared to some of these other states? I mean, what do you think?
I mean, part of it may be the tax rate, but I don't know. I mean, Georgia, North Carolina, I mean, certainly Florida, Tennessee, Texas, that have no income taxes at all. I mean, they would be more competitive, right, in that regard. It's about more than that, though. I mean, I think tax policy comes into play, but it's about more than that. It's about workforce. It's about other policies that the state has set out, because there's a lot more that goes into a business decision than just the tax policy.
No question,
what are the utility rates, right? What's it cost for power? A lot of these big manufacturers, which we've been fortunate to recruit, their biggest expense is in power. What is your availability with water? There's a whole host of things that come into play there.
And Senator, I think that's part of the reason that this amount of funds that we're talking about should be, in my opinion, invested into those exact things. When we talk about the technical schools and how important they are to job opportunities we all know that we need more in those schools because they have to provide the labor for our state. And right now, I would say there's probably 0 companies in South Carolina that have every employee they need because we don't have enough employees. And that's a problem.
Well, it is. Now, we could have a longer conversation about that too. But I think funding technical colleges is something that has great support around the state. Now, I will use this opportunity to say that I wish technical colleges would stay in their technical college lane and not try to be mini universities, because I think there's enough work to do with just the technical college lane without going into wanting to be a university as well.
Senator, I would agree that the opportunity for our technical schools to provide great opportunities direct to workforce is exactly the purpose of them. And I think that's what, when we heard from the tire manufacturers last week, that's what they were talking about. They need employees. They need folks now.
Well, and look, and I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, look, we make more tires in South Carolina than anywhere else. And we've made investments to help make that happen. But I do think, though, however, that we, look, with the policy that went into effect last week, the income tax policy, we anticipated those issues, and we did it with the understanding we were going to have enough money to fund the essentials, whether it be for technical colleges or roads or whatnot. We were going to be able to fund those things, and I think that's a good policy. I think we should stick with that policy, and we should get everybody's income taxes down to a 1.99 rate, as opposed to saying, well, I like you better than I like that person, and start carving it up. I think that's a problem.
Senator, the last thing is I agree with you that South Carolina Senate should make the decisions, not federal policy. Thank you for your time on this.
Senator from Lancaster, what purpose do you rise?
See if the senator will yield for questions.
Yes, sir.
Senator Yield. Senator Yield for questions.
Thank you, Senator. So if we were to adopt the big, beautiful bill conform today, and we say there's going to be an increase in taxes next year because of it, is it not true that next year, if we decided we did not want to give everybody a big tax increase, we could just simply plan to allow for a deduction on the back of our return to make up for that difference? Is that possible?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be, as I was saying earlier, the effect of doing that is you use growth in order to make that happen, and you slow down the reduction for everybody else in order to give those few people an additional tax benefit.
And so the question before us right now is whether to adopt the big, beautiful bill. And I've gone to the website of the United States Committee on Ways and Means, Chairman Jason Smith. And in this, it talks about how much the big, beautiful bill is going to cut taxes in the way of percentage of income. For example,
that's talking about federal income taxes.
Okay, but would you agree that if we adopt the big, beautiful bill, since we're at taxable income, and most of the big, beautiful bill occurs before taxable income, that by simple mathematics, we will be reducing our income for certain people in proportion to what the federal government is doing? Would you agree with that?
I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, I think that's exactly what it does. It gives an additional tax benefit for a specific carved out group of people. And the effect of that is to the detriment of everybody else next year.
Okay. So that detriment next year, we can clear up. You're right. It will cause some agony. We could clear it up next year.
I don't agree with that.
Okay. I thought we just said that a minute ago. That
no, I mean, you could use growth next year to the extent that it's there to extend this deduction again, right? You could do it again in year 3, and you could extend that deduction again. Now, then I think you've got a decision to make in year 4, because in year 4, the federal tax deductions disappear. And so then we have to decide, well, are we going to be subservient to the feds and have a tax increase here because that's what they're doing at the federal level, or are we going to continue to do that in perpetuity? That's a decision we'd have to make. But even if you just do it for 1 year, you're using growth money to pay for that. That is growth money that has been dedicated already to reducing everybody's income taxes. So yes, we could do it, and I would fully expect that if we conform today, that we'll figure out a way to extend that deduction next year, just as you suggested.
Yeah.
But it's going to slow down everybody else's income tax cuts.
Well, we're going to be divorcing ourselves next year from taxable income, defaulting to adjusted gross income, and we will use that going forward in perpetuity unless we decide that's bad tax policy. Just as we've decided taxable income now is bad tax policy, so we're going
Unless we don't.
Unless we don't.
Yeah, we decided that it was bad tax policy, and now this is suggesting that it's not bad tax policy, that we should do it.
Okay, I agree with that. But I want to get back to my point here. With the big, beautiful bill, people that have taxable income of $15,000 to $30,000 will see a 21% reduction in their taxes.
In federal tax policy?
In because of the big beautiful bill.
In federal tax policy?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take your word for it.
But by default, we've adopted federal tax policy if we conform.
Well, I don't
and
know.
Have been conforming.
I don't know if that applies across the board. I mean, I know. I mean, my understanding is that what we're dealing with here is we're taking the additional $6,000 deduction that's dedicated to people over 65 and applying that to your state taxes, and the additional deduction for people who work for tips, and you're applying that to your state income taxes. So we're saying.
Well, I'm just saying, based on the Ways and Means Committee report here.
Yeah, but the Ways and Means Committee report is for the federal tax system. I don't know that we're doing it across the board. Maybe we are, but it's.
I mean,
go ahead with your question.
Well,
yeah.
I'm just thinking out loud that by default, because we are at taxable income, we are going to proportionally share with our taxpayers if we conform to the big beautiful bill, will proportionally benefit just as they do at the federal level. Granted, it's not as much money because our rates aren't that high.
For that subset of individuals.
Well, this is the subset. This is just strictly based on income amounts and what the average reduction would be. Somebody that's got income between $50,000 and $60,000, it's a 13% reduction. But for those at the top 1% of the payers, we're going to end up paying more tax because of the big beautiful bill. So not everybody's a winner in the big beautiful bill. To me,
I'm sure we're not conforming with that part.
I don't know. I just think it's commutative math. I think they called it back in the day, that 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 2 = 4, etc. So, but in looking at this, and the one thing that I'm curious about, have we ever waited this late in the session to make our decisions for the CPAs on whether we're going to?
I think typically we wait later than this.
Okay.
I think the conformity decisions are almost always towards the end of session.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel better.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well,
those decisions always get made late. Now, granted, they usually are not as big as what this is, but sometimes, I mean, but we almost always make those decisions later in the session.
Okay. The other part is, back home, when people are talking to me about this problem and about our income taxes, they just think we're going to go down to zero, that it's just life is good, we're on the trail, every year we're going down, down, down. And as we know, there's caveats in the bill that just was passed, that it's not going to necessarily be automatic unless we have the growth to cover it. So I think there's going to be a little disappointment there if we don't meet in a particular year
they think that because there are people who are running for statewide office who are telling them that, who have no business whatsoever about talking about what the church budget should be, much less a statewide budget.
I know, but they also read the papers and they read the Facebook post, and they create expectations, unfortunately, that we can match. But the other part, though, that I'm curious about is in this body, if as we look, and I think about my constituents, and again, it comes back to perceptions, it comes back to Facebook readings, it comes back to newspaper readings, it comes back to those breakfast discussions, that what they're asking me about, are we going to conform to the big beautiful bill?
Yeah.
They're not thinking about next year, and I understand that.
Yeah, but isn't that our job to explain that to them?
Oh, and
I mean, isn't part of our job to explain? I mean, to first, I mean, this is the reason. Look, this is the reason that those guys in Philadelphia in 1787 were scared to death of democracy, right? All the talk now about democracy, those guys didn't want any part of it. This is the reason they created a Republican government, small r, Republican government, so that we then would take the time to review, ask questions, and understand the consequences. And then it's our obligation to try to explain that to what we've learned, they hire us to spend time on learning about these things. And then it's not, when I say explain it to them, not in a condescending manner, but look, you hired me to look at this. and to try to weigh the pros and the cons, here's what I found out. And now with the proliferation of social media, it makes that a whole lot harder. Right now, heck, with the internet, you can become a doctor in about 10 minutes. You look up what all your ailments are, you put it in, and AI is going to tell you, what the treatment should be. They'll give you the diagnosis and tell you what you need to do. You don't even need to go to medical school or go see a doctor. Glad you put that bill in, by the way. I think it'll help with that. But I think part of our job here is that when we get those types of communications, we say, yeah, did you think about this? Right? You know, from what I've heard, this will be a consequence of doing this. Is that something you like? I mean, I think that's part of our job as elected representatives. It's not just to do what we're told, but it's to study those things and then make the best decisions that we can, I think.
I agree. I agree. But the other question that's always presented to me about this whole tax reduction situation we have is however many years ago when this started, we started cutting the top rate. Why did we not, as two bodies, bicameral bodies here, why did we not just reduce everybody's rate so that everybody benefited, so that we were reducing taxes for everybody across the board?
Well,
and that's the question being asked of me.
Well, that's exactly what we did when we went from 7 to 6 and we collapsed some of the margins in between. We reduced them, but you reduced them for all payers.
Right.
But what had happened over the years is that you have a special carve out here, a special carve out there, so you really reduced the pool of people who were actually payers. Now, we were reducing it for everybody in that group, but the group was diminishing. So you had a smaller group of people shouldering the burden for everybody else. And what we did in the law that became effective last week is we said, as Senator from Greenville said, welcome to the game. Everybody's going to be part of this process now, but it's going to be at a much lower rate, unless we start carving out people here and there, and you're going to diminish your ability to do that.
I understand. But again, for our people that we represent, our constituents, they just couldn't understand that concept. And I really can't understand that concept too, as we're trying to put a broader base out there. And that broader base really aren't the real income producers anyway. To me, there was a more simplistic methodology, but it's gone now. That opportunity's passed us by. And so now we're stuck with this idea, what do we do this year? And again, because of the publicity, because of the perception, it's hard to overcome the statistics that I'm seeing now, because by default, the reduction we're going to see at the federal level will be a comparable reduction that we'll see this year if we pass the big, beautiful bill.
But it's so short-sighted.
Listen, I agree, yeah, but we're looking at right now today. And have you ever read the book, The Psychology of Money?
No, I ain't read that.
Have you ever heard this? Senator, I will give you a $1 today, or I'll give you $1.25 this time next year. What would you take?
$1 today?
But you can make 25% on that dollar if you wait 1 year. Do you make 25% in your investments? I don't want to get too personal there, but most of us don't make 25% in our investments. But that's the psychology of money, and that's what I think.
I get it.
I think that's what my constituents are telling me. They want
absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly right, which is why we have a republic versus a democracy, which is why we have a Senate that should act as the saucer to the cup, right? We have got to look beyond next week or next year in making good tax policy. If we don't, we're going to get what we've had, right? And that's what's going to happen. And I think that everyone in here is competent and capable enough to explain that to people. And I do not underestimate South Carolinians' ability to understand that when given the information.
But they're going to take $1 today instead of $1.25 tomorrow.
I don't know that they will. I think if you explain to them the consequences and they understand the pros and the cons, I think people will make the right decision. Doesn't mean everybody, right? And look, I think most of the time, the overwhelming majority of the time, people are going to make the right decision. Sometimes they don't. This is a good week, a good reminder that sometimes they don't, right? Because the people chose Barabbas, all right? But mostly, if you tell people the consequences, if you tell them the consequences, you lay it out, I think they'll make the right decision. And I think here, what we're doing is we're not even going to try to explain it to you. We're just going to give in to all the hype and the emotions of some people having an election season, so we're just going to do it, right? Because you know why? Because it's easy. It's the easy thing to do. The easy thing to do is let's just conform and move on to what's next. We'll deal with next year. We'll figure it out, right? That's the easy thing to do, and I don't want to steal the senator's thunder, but do right, not easy.
Understand. Senator, I do appreciate all your time. I appreciate all your effort, appreciate all your opinions and leadership that you give us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator from Spartanburg, Senator Martin, what purpose do you ask?
See if the senator from Edgefield would yield for a question.
Senator, yield for question.
Senator, I
yields for question.
appreciate all of your comments. Thank you. Are you aware, I've been explaining this issue to people. I've explained it to them that every year we do this. So every year, they may have to wait. But it's this year, I think you mentioned that there's something big out there for a certain group. That's what's causing the angst,
And there's
right?
more hype about it too, right? I mean, yeah, so that's right.
Okay. So like right now, if the act that has become law, and if this doesn't pass, there's nobody that's not going to be able to go file their taxes, correct?
Yeah.
And the only thing that's
Exactly.
holding them up is the uncertainty of what the state might do on conformity.
That's right.
Okay, so if we don't conform, they're still going to get all the benefits of the federal tax policy on the tax side, correct?
Absolutely.
So can you tell me what they're missing out on the state level?
Well, my understanding is if you use federal taxable income as your base, that if you take what the One Big Beautiful Bill Act provided, it would be an additional $6,000 deduction for people over 65. And I'm not sure, it may phase down depending on income levels. I can't remember about that. And then there's also a deduction for people who work for tips. Because
This year's going to be that way anyway, right? Because our law goes into effect
this year's
next
going to be
year.
what?
This year's going to be that way anyway. It's using the federal.
Yeah, so the question is do you get that extra $6,000 deduction this year and then have it change next year? Or do you get that additional deduction for tips this year and have it change next year? Right? And then it's a good tax policy anyway.
And each and every year, I hope I was correct. I've told a lot of constituents that each and every year, depending on what the federal government has done, we could have given them a tax increase or a tax decrease by conforming, correct?
Absolutely. Well, it's not every year that Congress makes tax law changes, but, most every year we've got a conformity bill. And my experience has been when those tax changes at the federal level have been beneficial to the taxpayer, we've conformed. When they've been detrimental to the taxpayer, we have not conformed.
So
So sometimes we do and sometimes we don't.
If you just wanted to take the postcard vote in the now, you would vote for this bill. But if you're willing to be honest with your constituents and tell them the truth in years after and do what's best for tax policy, you would vote no, correct?
Yeah, well, and look, and in 2 years, their tax burden is going to be considerably less than what it is today.
Because of what we passed.
Because of what we passed.
All right.
As long as we don't undo it.
Thank you.
Senator from Beaufort, what purpose do you raise?
See if the senator will yield.
For questions?
For questions.
I can tell this is going to be fun.
No. And Senator, did you know that I think
Yes, sir, I will.
Senator yields for questions.
made some very persuasive arguments up there, and I think I'm leaning toward supporting your position here. But I guess what makes this so difficult, did you know, is that here and now, if we do not conform, the bottom line for this year in any way, or what taxes are being paid, South Carolina is going to pay $288 million more. I mean, that's just a reality. And I understand the argument in regard to it sets us up for future increases in the future. I understand the argument in regard to the temptation to use surpluses next year to backstop and continue doing this. And I get all that. But isn't the reason we're in this box is that, to the Senator Blackman's point, there's $288 million less in South Carolinians' pockets if we do not conform for this year.
That's what it sounds like.
Right.
Yeah.
And did you know that there is, and I've talked about this a lot on the stump in terms of economics or economists talk in terms of scarcity, about we have scarce resources out there. There's only a scarce amount of things to generate things from. And that I think the best reason I always say for lower taxes is that it keeps money in a more productive sector than removing it to a less productive sector. And I think that's true.
I agree with that, too.
But I guess, the argument in favor of conformity would be, well, at least for a year, you're leaving $288 million in a more productive sector than removing it to a less productive sector. But I take your point in regard to looking at longer-term policy and setting ourselves up for even better situations in the future where even more money can be left in people's pockets in the future. I take all of that.
That's right. I mean, I think over the long term, that's the better. Now, look, I would be okay if we want to give $288 million in rebates.
Right.
Right? I mean, I would be okay if we want to do something, and I'm not a big rebate fan because the way those things have worked out in the past. I would prefer to have a tax cut as opposed, but I'm okay with that. I also think that probably a lot of people in your area, I know a lot of mine, would probably be okay if we put $288 extra million into roads and bridges.
It's true.
So, I take your point, though, and I agree with your premise, and that is it is better that people keep their money than government take it. So I guess, again, this is why I think if you just look at it in a vacuum, if you put the blinders on and that's all you're looking at, then conformity is the best decision. But if you look at all the consequences and all the pros and all the cons, I think over the long term, the better policy is not to conform because you're going to be able to set South Carolina up to be a much better, much more productive place into the future.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have an amendment on the desk. Senator from Dorchester, what purpose do you raise?
Like to be heard?
Well, we need to take up, we have an amendment on that. I need to just being with second reading, I'll have to go to the amendments first, and then I'll come back to you. Reading clerk will publish the amendment.
The amendment is by Senator Clymer, amends the bill by adding appropriate numbered section to read.
Senator from York, Senator Clymer, what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. To explain the amendment.
You're recognized on your amendment. Senator from York, Senator Clymer.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I'll say that a lot of the senator from Edgefield's commentary around the wisdom of this is fair debate to have. And the amendment before us here doesn't really get to the question of whether the state should conform to the federal tax code. Senator from Edgefield spent a lot of time talking about whether the state should conform to the federal tax code. This amendment before you now deals with how. What is the implementation? How is this going to work for the taxpayers we all represent? And so, one of the, and this has been brought up in the back and forth over this bill, the confusion experienced by many taxpayers today as a consequence of the legislature's late decision-making on this question of to conform or not to conform. And there are tens of thousands of South Carolinians who have already filed their taxes. They made a sincere and good faith effort to comply with the revenue code on a timely basis. They have already filed their taxes. And depending on the outcome of this bill before us, the legislature may change the tax code after taxpayers have already filed their taxes. And so the amendment before you here gives taxpayers a choice. If somebody's already filed, they can obviously file an amended return on the basis of an amended tax code. That would be an option for them. That involves often fairly significant compliance cost For most folks, they're going to have to pay a CPA. There'll be some cost associated with their decision to file an amended return. It's complicated, it's messy. But the amendment here gives taxpayers a choice. If you already filed your return, you can file an amended return if you want to, or you can withhold filing an amended return this year and instead claim a tax credit next year on money that you overpaid in this tax year. Right? And so it's a hold harmless for taxpayers who diligently filed early. The government, despite changing the tax code at the last minute, if we adopt this amendment, this would hold harmless those South Carolinians who were just trying to do the right thing and get their taxes done early on time. I'd be happy to yield any questions, and hearing none, move adoption of the amendment.
Pending question is the adoption of the amendment. All those in favor would say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. The amendment is adopted by the Senate. We have no further amendments. Senator from Dorchester, what purpose do you rise, sir?
Like to be heard?
You're recognized on the bill. Senator from Dorchester.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is that I'm up here again talking about taxes. The good news is I don't think I need to be up here long because I think the Senator from Edgefield covered quite a bit. But I do want to echo a few points and maybe make a